In a hospital, a poor little girl on the verge of death receives a visit that would change everything. Upon meeting her, a powerful millionaire finds himself disarmed by her fragile but hopeful smile. Without knowing who he was, the girl made one last devastating request. "Can you be my father?" At that very moment, he couldn't hold back his tears, and his life would never be the same. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. It was a gray morning in Boston, the kind where the sky seems to carry the weight of all the world's sorrows. The sound of cardiac monitors and hurried footsteps of nurses filled the corridor of the pediatric oncology ward at Massachusetts General Hospital. There, amid pristine white walls and the scent of antiseptic, one of the most affluent and influential men in the country was making an unusual visit. Known for his generosity, philanthropy, and a fortune built over decades, Maxwell Bennett rarely appeared personally at institutions he funded. But on this particular morning, something compelled him to break from his usual routine and visit this specific hospital. What should have been just a quick visit transformed into an event that would completely change his life. As he walked down the corridor, his eyes were drawn to a half-open door from which came a soft childlike laugh filled with fragility. When he glanced inside, his entire body froze. On the bed sat a little girl, extremely pale with delicate features, large eyes, and a smile that contrasted sharply with the situation she was in. The impact didn't come just from the moving scene. This child bore a striking resemblance to someone he could never forget. His ex-wife Sarah, who had vanished exactly 7 years ago, the victim of a sudden and mysterious disappearance, the same number of years as the girl's age. Her eyes, the shape of her face, even that somewhat shy smile, were perfect copies. Stunned, he felt the air escape from his lungs. He needed to lean against the doorframe to keep from collapsing. Memories came flooding back. The happy moments, the arguments, the unfulfilled promises, and especially the void her disappearance had left. Driven by an impulse he couldn't comprehend, he pushed the door open and entered the room. The girl, surprised, raised her head slightly, her eyes lighting up. She had no idea who he was, but recognized in him a kind face and a presence that somehow seemed familiar. "What's your name?" Maxwell asked, his voice with emotion. "Emily." She replied softly, studying him with curious eyes. "Are you a doctor?" He shook his head, moving closer to her bed. "No, I'm just a visitor. I help the hospital sometimes." Emily nodded as if this explanation made perfect sense. Her small fingers traced patterns on the blanket covering her legs. "They say I'm very sick," she confided, her voice matter-of-fact in that way only children can manage. "But I'm not scared." The similarity in her mannerisms to Sarah was uncanny. The way she tilted her head, the slight furrow between her brows as she concentrated, all of it sent shock waves through Maxwell's system. "You're very brave," he said, unable to take his eyes off her face. A nurse entered the room, surprise evident in her expression at finding the famous Maxwell Bennett sitting at a patient's bedside. "Mr. Bennett, I didn't realize you were visiting today," she said, checking Emily's vital signs on the monitor. "It was an impromptu decision," he replied, his gaze still fixed on Emily. After the nurse left, a comfortable silence settled between them. Emily picked up a tattered book from her bedside table and asked if he would read to her. Without hesitation, Maxwell agreed, taking the book gently from her small hands. As he read, Emily's eyes began to droop. But before she drifted off to sleep, she looked at him with an expression that seemed far older than her years. "What's your biggest wish, Emily?" Maxwell asked, almost without thinking, his voice barely audible. What followed was a silence that seemed to suspend time. The girl took a deep breath, looked directly into his eyes, and with a sweet and determined expression answered, "Can you be my dad?" For a few seconds, everything stopped. The sound of monitors became distant. The outside world ceased to exist. Only those words echoed in his mind, reverberating with enough force to dismantle any emotional barrier he carried. This request, simple yet devastating, opened a box of questions, suspicions, and feelings he never imagined having to face again. How could this girl bear such a resemblance to someone he had loved deeply? And why would fate choose precisely this moment to place her in his path? "I've never had a dad," Emily continued, mistaking his silence for hesitation. "The other kids in the foster homes always had someone visit them. Even if it wasn't their real parents," her voice dropped to a whisper. "I just want to know what it feels like." Maxwell's throat tightened. "I'd be honored," he said, the words coming out before he could analyze them. "But tell me, Emily, what happened to your parents? Do you know anything about them?" Emily shook her head. "Sister Margaret at the orphanage said I was left at their doorstep when I was a baby. No note or anything, just me in a basket." She shrugged as if discussing someone else's story. "They named me after the nun who found me." The coincidence was too striking to ignore. Left abandoned as a newborn around the same time Sarah had disappeared. The physical resemblance that went beyond mere chance. The inexplicable pull he felt toward this child from the moment he saw her. "Emily, would you mind if I came to visit you again tomorrow?" Maxwell asked, already knowing he would move mountains to make it happen. Her face lit up with a joy that transformed her entirely. For a moment, the pallor and fatigue of illness receded, replaced by pure hope. "Really? You promise?" "I promise," he said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. As Maxwell left the hospital that afternoon, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The possibility that had taken root couldn't be dismissed as mere fantasy. The timing, the resemblance, the inexplicable connection he felt, all pointed to a truth he both feared and desperately wanted to confirm. Back in his penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, Maxwell paced the floor, replaying every detail of his relationship with Sarah. They had been separated for several months before her disappearance, their once passionate love having crumbled under the weight of his workaholic tendencies and her growing depression. The last time he'd seen her, they'd argued bitterly. 2 days later, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a short note that said, "I need to find myself. Please don't look for me." Respecting her wishes had been the hardest thing he'd ever done, but he'd complied. Now, he wondered if that had been his greatest mistake. The next morning, Maxwell arrived at the hospital carrying a small stuffed bear. He found Emily sitting up in bed, a nurse braiding her thin hair. When she saw him, her entire face transformed. "You came back," she exclaimed as if she couldn't quite believe it. "I promised, didn't I?" Maxwell replied, handing her the bear. "This is for you." Emily hugged the toy to her chest, her eyes shining. "No one's ever given me a present before. Not just for me." Those simple words shattered something inside Maxwell. In that moment, he made a silent vow. Whether or not this child was who he suspected her to be, he would ensure she never felt unwanted again. As days turned into weeks, Maxwell became a fixture at Emily's bedside. He rearranged his entire schedule, delegating business responsibilities to his executive team, much to the chagrin of his longtime friend and legal counsel, William Harrington. "You've barely been in the office, Max," William said during one of their phone calls. "The board is getting anxious. This isn't like you." "Things change," Maxwell replied, watching Emily as she drew pictures in a sketchbook he'd brought her. "Some things are more important than quarterly reports." What Maxwell didn't share with William was his growing suspicion. No, his certainty that Emily was his daughter. A daughter he never knew existed. A daughter who needed him now more than ever. And he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what secrets it might reveal. William Harrington's office at the Bennett Industries headquarters towered 52 stories above downtown Boston, offering a panoramic view of the city that had made Maxwell Bennett a billionaire. Yet today, William barely noticed the vista as he paced the polished floors, phone pressed to his ear. "Look, I understand you're concerned," he said, his voice carefully measured despite the tension evident in his posture. "But I need absolute discretion on this. No one can know you're investigating, especially not Maxwell." On the other end of the line, A private investigator assured him of his secrecy before disconnecting. William placed the phone down on his immaculate desk and sank into his leather chair, loosening his tie. For 23 years, William had been more than just Maxwell Bennett's attorney. He'd been his right hand, his confidant, the architect, though, of many of the company's most profitable ventures. He'd helped transform a promising tech startup into a global empire. And all along, he'd been careful, methodical, ensuring that his own interests remained protected. Now, this child threatened everything. William opened his laptop and accessed a hidden folder containing documents he'd hoped would never need to be revisited. Records of Sarah Bennett's final months, medical reports, financial transactions, the carefully constructed paper trail that had ensured the newborn baby girl would disappear into the system without a trace. He'd convinced himself it was for Maxwell's own good. The man had been devastated by Sarah's deteriorating mental health, their separation, and then her sudden disappearance. A child would have complicated the grieving process, distracted him from the business that needed his full attention. At least that's what William had told himself as he'd made the necessary arrangements. But in truth, William had acted to protect his own position. A child, and hair, would have altered everything, including the carefully crafted succession plan that would eventually place him at the helm of Bennett Industries. And now, against all odds, father and daughter had found each other. Across town, Maxwell sat in Dr. Catherine Morgan's office at Massachusetts General Hospital, listening intently as she explained Emily's condition: acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Dr. Morgan said, her kind eyes softening the clinical terminology. It's the most common form of childhood leukemia and typically has a good prognosis with proper treatment. But Maxwell prompted, sensing the hesitation in her voice. But Emily's case is particularly aggressive. She hasn't responded well, had a standard protocols. The chemotherapy is taking a severe toll on her system without producing the results we'd hoped for. Maxwell leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What are the alternatives? There are experimental treatments, clinical trials. Dr. Morgan replied, shuffling through Emily's file. But spaces are limited and the qualification criteria are stringent. I don't care what it costs or what strings need to be pulled. Maxwell said, his voice resolute. I want her to have the best possible chance. Dr. Morgan studied him with a mixture of compassion and curiosity. Mr. Bennett, forgive me for asking, but why this particular child? You fund our pediatric ward generously, but I've never seen you take such a personal interest before. Maxwell hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I believe Emily might be my daughter. The doctor's eyebrows rose. Does Emily know this? Not yet. I need to be certain first. I've scheduled DNA testing, but in the meantime, I've filed for emergency temporary guardianship through my attorney. The orphanage has agreed given the circumstances. I see. Dr. Morgan nodded. Well, regardless of the biological connection, it's clear Emily has formed an attachment to you. In my professional opinion, that relationship alone could be beneficial to her recovery. Children often respond better to treatment when they have strong emotional support. After leaving Dr. Morgan's office, Maxwell made his way to Emily's room, his mind racing with plans. He found her sitting up in bed watching a cartoon on the small television mounted on the wall. Hey there, he said, smiling as he entered. Emily's face brightened immediately. Max, I was hoping you'd come today. Look what Nurse Jenny gave me. She held up a colorful friendship bracelet. She showed me how to make them. I made one for you too. She reached for a small blue and green braided band on her nightstand. Maxwell sat on the edge of her bed, deeply touched as she tied the homemade bracelet around his wrist. I'll treasure this, he said, his voice thick with emotion. How are you feeling today? Emily shrugged. Okay, I guess. The doctor said, I need to be strong for some new medicine they're going to try. That's right, Maxwell confirmed, carefully choosing his words. And I'm going to be right here with you through all of it. Emily tilted her head, studying him with eyes too wise for her years. Why? You don't even know me. The question caught Maxwell off guard, but he recognized the opportunity it presented. "Actually, Emily, there's something I'd like to talk to you about. Something important." He explained in simple terms that he had reason to believe they might be related, that she might, in fact, be his daughter. He watched her face carefully as he spoke, trying to gauge her reaction. "Is that why you look at me sometimes, like you're seeing someone else?" Emily asked perceptively. Maxwell nodded, surprised by her insight. "You remind me very much of someone I cared about deeply. Your mother, I think." "My mother," Emily repeated the words as if tasting them for the first time. "What was she like?" "She was beautiful," Maxwell said, memories flooding back. "Kind, artistic, with a laugh that could light up a room. She loved the ocean and rainy days and chocolate ice cream with rainbow sprinkles." "I like chocolate ice cream, too," Emily said solemnly. "But I've never seen the ocean." "Well," Maxwell said, his decision made in that moment, "once you're feeling better, I'll take you. We'll go to the Cape or Maine or anywhere you want." "Promise what?" "I promised." As they talked, neither noticed the figure pausing outside Emily's room. William Harrington observed the scene with narrowed eyes before continuing down the corridor, phone already in hand. The next morning, Maxwell sat in a sterile examination room at a private medical facility, rolling up his sleeve as a technician prepared to draw blood for the DNA test. His phone buzzed with a message from William. "Urgent matter requires your attention. Board meeting called for tomorrow. Please confirm attendance." Maxwell frowned, typing a quick response. "Can't make it. Reschedule for next week." Seconds later, his phone rang. "Max, you can't keep putting this off," William said without preamble when Maxwell answered. "The Peterson merger is at a critical stage. The board is getting restless. Your absence is being noticed. Handle it, Will." "That's why I pay you the obscene amount I do," Maxwell replied, wincing slightly as the needle entered his vein. "I have more important matters right now. This child, her name is Emily." "Fine, Emily. I understand she's captured your interest, your sympathy even. But you're allowing emotion to cloud your judgment. The company needs you. Your employees need you, and Emily needs me more," Maxwell said firmly. "I'll call you tomorrow." He ended the call, unable to shake a strange feeling of unease. William had been his closest friend and advisor for over 2 decades, yet something in his tone felt off, too insistent, too controlling. Later that afternoon, as he sat beside Emily's bed reading her a story, a nurse brought in a manila envelope. "This just arrived for you, Mr. Bennett," marked urgent. Inside was a preliminary report from a private investigator he'd hired to look into the circumstances of Emily's abandonment. Maxwell scanned the document, his heart racing as he read. Records indicate infant female was admitted to Boston Memorial Hospital on March 17, 2018, the same date as Sarah Bennett's reported disappearance. Birth mother listed as Jane Doe, claimed unconscious upon arrival. Baby transferred to social services following day. Hospital administrator who authorized transfer, Dr. James Collins, currently employed by Bennett Medical Research Division. Maxwell's blood ran cold. Bennett Medical Research, a subsidiary of his own company. The coincidence was too great. This was the first tangible connection between Sarah Emily and his own organization. His phone buzzed again. A text from the DNA testing facility. Results expedited as requested. Available tomorrow 9 Hodra a.m. Maxwell looked at Emily, now dozing peacefully after her afternoon medication. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the picture they formed raised more questions than answers. Who had orchestrated Emily's separation from her mother? Who had ensured she would disappear into the foster care system? And most importantly, who had kept her existence a secret from him for 7 long years? As night fell over Boston, Maxwell made a silent vow to uncover the truth. No matter how painful it might be, no matter whose loyalties it might call into question, for Emily's sake and for Sarah's memory, he would find answers and someone would be held accountable. The DNA testing facility occupied the entire 15th floor of a sleek glass building in Cambridge's biotech corridor. Maxwell arrived precisely at 90 Odrid, having barely slept the night before. His mind had raced with possibilities, with hopes and fears that had kept him staring at the ceiling until dawn broke over the Boston skyline. Dr. Ela Chen, the facilities director, greeted him personally, guiding him to a private consultation room. Her expression gave nothing away as she placed a sealed envelope on the polished table between them. "The results are conclusive, Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice professionally neutral. "The probability of paternity is 99.9997%. Emily is unquestionably your biological daughter." Even though he had felt it in his bones from the moment he saw her, hearing the scientific confirmation struck Maxwell with the force of a physical blow. He closed his eyes briefly, emotions washing over him in powerful waves. Vindication, joy, rage at the lost years, and overwhelming guilt for not having somehow known, for not having searched harder for Sarah. "Thank you, Doctor Chen," he managed, his voice barely steady. "There's something else," she added, sliding a second document across the table. "Since you requested a comprehensive genetic analysis, we also identified markers consistent with a rare genetic variant that affects how Emily's body processes certain types of medications. This could be critically important information for her oncology team." Maxwell's focus sharpened instantly. "How so?" "This particular variant might explain why she hasn't responded well to standard chemotherapy protocols. With this information, her doctors could potentially adjust her treatment regimen, possibly improving her outcomes significantly." Within the hour, Maxwell was sitting across from Dr. Morgan at Massachusetts General. The genetic reports spread between them. The oncologist's expression grew increasingly animated as she studied the findings. "This changes everything," she said, reaching for her phone. "There's a clinical trial at Dana-Farber specifically targeting patients with this genetic profile. It's showing promising results, but spaces are extremely limited. Get her in," Maxwell said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes," Dr. Morgan raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Bennett, I understand your determination, but there are protocols, waiting lists." "I don't care," Maxwell interrupted, leaning forward. "I've just discovered that my daughter has been kept from me for 7 years. During that time, she's been shuttled between foster homes, diagnosed with an aggressive cancer, and left to face it all alone. I cannot stand by and watch her suffer any longer when there might be a treatment that could help her." His voice broke slightly on the final words, and Dr. Morgan's expression softened. "I'll make some calls," she promised. "In the meantime, I think you have some news to share with Emily." Emily was sitting up in bed when Maxwell arrived at her room, a child psychologist named Dr. Patel beside her. They had agreed this would be the best approach, having a professional present to help Emily process the life-altering information. "Hey, Max," Emily called cheerfully when she saw him. "Dr. Patel brought me a new book about space. Did you know there are planets where it rains diamonds?" Maxwell smiled, settling into the chair beside her bed. "That sounds amazing. Maybe we can read it together later. Right now, though, I have something important to talk to you about." With gentle guidance from Dr. Patel, Maxwell explained the DNA test results, watching Emily's expressive face as she absorbed the news. Her initial reaction was stunned silence, followed by a furrowing of her brow as she processed the information. "So, you really are my dad?" she asked finally, her voice small and uncertain. "Yes," Maxwell confirmed, fighting to keep his own emotions in check. "I am, and you didn't know. All this time, no, sweetheart. If I had known about you, I would have moved heaven and earth to find you." Emily was quiet for a long moment, plucking at a loose thread on her blanket. "What about my mom? Where is she?" Maxwell exchanged a glance with Dr. Patel before answering carefully. "Your mother's name was Sarah. She went missing 7 years ago, right around the time you were born. I've been trying to find out what happened to her ever since." "Was she nice?" Emily asked, looking up with Sarah's eyes. "She was wonderful," Maxwell said softly. "Creative, kind, with a heart bigger than the whole world. And she would have loved you so much." "Emily, I know that with absolute certainty." Emily absorbed this, then asked the question Maxwell had been dreading. "So, what happens now?" "Well," he said, reaching for her small hand, If it's okay with you, I'd like to be your dad. Not just biologically, but in every way that matters. I've already started the legal process to become your guardian, and eventually if you want to adopt you formally. Emily's eyes widened. You mean I would live with you in your house? That's right. Once you're well enough to leave the eye hospital. Would I have my own room? Maxwell smiled. Absolutely. You can decorate it any way you like. Emily's face lit up briefly before doubt crept back in. But what if I don't get better? The question hit Maxwell like a physical blow. Before he could formulate a response, Dr. Patel intervened gently. Emily, remember what we talked about. It's okay to have those fears, but right now, your doctors are working very hard to find the best treatment for you. Actually, Maxwell added, that's the other news I wanted to share. The DNA test showed something important about your body that might help your doctors treat your illness better. Doctor. Morgan is already working on getting you into a special program that could help you much more than your current medicine. Emily processed this information, her face showing a cautious optimism that tugged at Maxwell's heart. So, I might actually get better for real. That's what we're all working toward, Maxwell assured her. And I'll be with you every step of the way. After the emotional conversation, Dr. Patel suggested Emily might need some time to process everything. Maxwell agreed, promising to return that evening and headed to his office for the first time in weeks. He found William waiting in his private elevator lobby, tension evident in every line of his body. Finally, William said, falling into step beside him as Maxwell strode toward his office. We need to talk, Max. The board is in uproar. The Peterson deal is stalling. And now I hear rumors you're filing for guardianship of some hospital charity case. Maxwell stopped abruptly, turning to face his longtime friend and advisor. That charity case is my daughter, Will. The DNA results came back this morning. Emily is Sarah's child, our child. William's face palled visibly, and reaction that didn't escape Maxwell's notice. That's impossible, he stammered. Sarah wasn't pregnant when she disappeared. Apparently, she was, Maxwell counted, studying William's expression closely, and somehow that information was kept from me. Emily was born the very day Sarah vanished. Will at Boston Memorial, where our company's medical division has a significant presence. Quite a coincidence, wouldn't you say? William adjusted his tie, his composure returning in increments. Max, you need to tread carefully here. If this gets out, a secret love child suddenly appearing. The press will have a field day. The company's stock could take a hit. Your reputation. I don't give a damn about my reputation. Maxwell cut him off sharply. I care about my daughter who has spent 7 years in the system when she should have been with me. Someone orchestrated that will. Someone made sure I never knew she existed. William held his gaze, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything yet, Maxwell replied evenly. But I intend to find out exactly what happened 7 years ago. And when I do, there will be consequences. The tension between them was palpable, crackling like electricity in the air. After a long moment, William nodded stiffly. I understand you're upset. This is a lot to process. But don't let emotion cloud your judgment, Max. You have responsibilities beyond this one child. She's not just this one child, Maxwell said quietly. She's my child, and right now she needs me more than anyone else does. He brushed past William into his office, closing the door firmly behind him. Once alone, he sank into his chair, the weight of the morning's revelations settling heavily on his shoulders. Emily was his daughter. The confirmation should have been purely joyful, but instead it opened a Pandora's box of troubling questions. His phone rang. Dr. Morgan from Mass General. Mr. Bennett, I have good news, she said without preamble. I've spoken with the team at Dana-Farber. Given Emily's genetic profile and the aggressive nature of her condition, they've agreed to admit her to the trial program immediately. We can transfer her as soon as tomorrow. Relief flooded through him. That's wonderful news, Doctor. Thank you. There's more, Dr. Morgan continued. The trial is testing a revolutionary targeted therapy developed by Nexus Biotech. Preliminary results have been remarkable, with remission rates far exceeding standard treatments for patients with Emily's specific genetic markers. Maxwell froze his grip, tightening on the phone. Did you say Nexus Biotech? Yes, they're at the forefront of personalized cancer treatments. Why do you ask? Maxwell opened his laptop, quickly pulling up a file of Bennett Industries' investment portfolio. There it was, Nexus Biotech, a startup that had received substantial funding from his company 3 years ago, championed by none other than William Harrington, who now sat on their board of directors. No reason. Maxwell replied, his mind racing. Please proceed with the transfer arrangements. I'll be there tomorrow morning. As he hung up, Maxwell stared at the Nexus Biotech investment summary on his screen. Another connection. Another thread in a web that was becoming increasingly complex and increasingly disturbing. William had pushed hard for this investment, insisting on unusual terms that gave him personal oversight rather than standard corporate governance. At the time, Maxwell had thought nothing of it. William had always had a keen eye for promising biotech ventures. Now he wondered what else his trusted advisor might have been keeping from him. Dana-Farber Cancer Institute stood as a beacon of hope amid Boston's Longwood medical area, its modern architecture bathed in early morning sunlight as Maxwell escorted Emily through its entrance. The child clutched her stuffed bear in one arm, her other hand firmly grasping Maxwell's, as they followed Dr. Karen Winters, the lead researcher on the clinical trial. We've prepared a special room for Emily, Dr. Winters explained, leading them down a corridor decorated with colorful murals of forests and magical creatures. We try to make the environment as comfortable as possible for our younger patients. Emily's eyes widened as they entered her new room. Unlike the sterile hospital space she'd known at Mass General, this one had been thoughtfully designed with a child in mind. Walls painted a soft blue, a small bookshelf filled with children's books, and a window seat overlooking a garden. What do you think? Maxwell asked, watching her reaction carefully. Emily moved slowly around the space, touching the patchwork quilt on the bed, examining the small desk in the corner. It's pretty, she said softly. Is this really all for me? All for you, Dr. Winters confirmed with a warm smile. And there's a recreation room down the hall where you can meet other kids in the program when you're feeling up to it. As Dr. Winters outlined the treatment schedule, Maxwell noticed how Emily's posture gradually relaxed, her initial apprehension giving way to cautious optimism. The doctor explained in child-friendly terms how the new medicine worked, using a tablet to show animated illustrations that made complex science accessible. So, this medicine is special just for me? Emily asked, her natural curiosity emerging. That's right, Dr. Winters nodded. We've learned that everyone's body is a little different, like fingerprints. This treatment is designed to work specifically with your unique body chemistry. Like a key that fits only your lock, Maxwell added, earning an approving nod from the doctor. After Emily was settled in and the initial assessment completed, Maxwell stepped into the hallway to take a call from his private investigator, Michael Reeves. I've got something, Reeves said without preamble. Pulled some strings with a contact at Boston Memorial. Accessed the archived records from the night Sarah was admitted 7 years ago. She came in unconscious. Severe preeclampsia. Emergency C-section performed to save the baby. Maxwell leaned against the wall, his heart pounding. And Sarah, what happened to her? That's where it gets strange. Records show she was transferred to the ICU in critical but stable condition. Then nothing. No discharge record, no transfer documentation, no nothing. It's like she vanished from the hospital system. That's impossible, Maxwell said, his voice barely above a whisper. Patients don't just disappear from hospitals. They do if someone alters the records, Reeves countered. And get this, the attending physician that night was Dr. James Collins, the same one who signed off on transferring the baby to social services. Collins, Maxwell repeated, the name now familiar. He works for Bennett Medical Research now. Exactly. Started there about 6 months after Sarah's disappearance. Substantial salary increase, impressive title. Man made quite a leap in his career. Maxwell's jaw tightened. I need to speak with him. Already working on setting that up, but there's something else. The hospital visitor logs from that night show one non-medical professional visiting the maternity ward after hours. William Harrington. The revelation hit Maxwell like a physical blow. William had been there the night Emily was born, the night Sarah vanished, and he had never mentioned it, not once in 7 years. Keep digging, Maxwell instructed Reeves. I want everything you can find on Collins, and I want to know exactly what William was doing at that hospital. Returning to Emily's room, Maxwell found her already engrossed in conversation with a nurse who was setting up her first treatment. He marveled at her resilience, how quickly she adapted to new environments, how bravely she faced each new challenge. In those moments, he saw Sarah's strength in her, a legacy that transcended the years of separation. Over the following days, Maxwell established a new routine centered entirely around Emily. He converted a conference room at Dana-Farber into a makeshift office, conducting essential business remotely while remaining within quick reach of his daughter. When Emily felt well enough, they explored the Institute's gardens in a wheelchair, Maxwell pointing out different birds and plants, watching her face light up with each new discovery. In the evenings, they established rituals that became precious to them, both reading adventures, sharing simple meals, when Emily's appetite allowed, and what they came to call question time, when Emily could ask anything about her mother or Maxwell's life, and he would answer with complete honesty. "Did you love my mom?" Emily asked one evening, as twilight painted the Boston skyline in shades of lavender and gold. Maxwell smiled, memories washing over him. "Very much. We met in college. She was studying art, and I was this nerdy engineering student who couldn't believe someone so vibrant and creative would give me the time of day." Why did you stop being together? Emily's directness, so like Sarah's, never failed to catch him off guard. Maxwell considered how to frame the complex truth for a 7-year-old. Sometimes, even when people love each other, they have trouble making each other happy. I was working too much building my company, and your mom needed more than I was giving her. Emily nodded sagely. Sister Margaret at the orphanage said that happens sometimes. That's why some kids come to live there. Your mom would have never willingly given you up, Maxwell said firmly, needing Emily to understand this fundamental truth. Never. Something happened that prevented her from keeping you, but it wasn't because she didn't want you. The conviction in his voice seemed to comfort Emily. She leaned against him, her small body warm against his side. "I wish I could have known her." "I wish that too, sweetheart," Maxwell whispered, kissing the top of her head. "But she gave me you, and that's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." As Emily's treatment progressed, Maxwell observed small but significant improvements. Her blood work showed promising responses to the experimental therapy. Her energy levels gradually increased, and the color returned to her cheeks. Dr. Winters cautioned against premature optimism, but acknowledged that Emily was responding better than anticipated. The Nexus protocol is specifically designed for patients with her genetic profile, Dr. Winters explained during one of their weekly consultations. It's as if the treatment was created with someone exactly like Emily in mind. The comment struck Maxwell as odd, but before he could pursue it, his phone buzzed with a text from Reeves. Found Collins. Meeting set for tomorrow, 2 p.m. That night, after Emily had fallen asleep, Maxwell returned to his penthouse to prepare for the confrontation ahead. He hadn't been home in days, and the space felt cavernous and empty after the intimate warmth of Emily's hospital room. On impulse, he entered the storage room where he'd carefully packed away Sarah's belongings after her disappearance, unable to part with them, but too pained to keep them in sight. Among the boxes, he found her sketchbooks, dozens of them filled with her distinctive drawings and paintings. Sarah had been talented, her work capturing not just images, but emotions. Maxwell sat on the floor, carefully turning the pages of the most recent book, the one she'd been working on before she vanished. Midway through, he stopped, his breath catching. The sketch showed a nursery, meticulously detailed, a crib by a window, a rocking chair, shelves lined with stuffed animals. In the corner, Sarah had written a single word, hope. She had been planning for their child, preparing, dreaming. Maxwell closed the sketchbook, a new determination hardening within him. Someone had stolen those dreams from Sarah, from Emily, from him. And he was increasingly certain that William Harrington knew far more than he'd ever let on. The next morning, Maxwell arrived at Dana-Farber earlier than usual, bringing with him a surprise, a small watercolor set and sketchbook similar to the one Sarah had used. "And your mother was an artist," he explained as Emily examined the gift with reverent fingers. "I thought you might enjoy trying it." Emily's face lit up. "Will you show me how?" "I'm afraid I'm terrible at art," Maxwell admitted with a laugh, "but we can learn together." They spent the morning painting, Maxwell's clumsy attempts at landscapes contrasting with Emily's surprisingly intuitive use of color and form. Watching her concentrate, tongue caught between her teeth, just as Sarah used to do, Maxwell felt an ache of recognition so profound it nearly overwhelmed him. At one point, a nurse paused in the doorway, smiling at the scene. "You two look so much alike when you're concentrating," she commented before continuing on her rounds. The casual observation struck Maxwell deeply. People were beginning to see what he felt, the undeniable connection between them that transcended the years of separation. They were becoming a family, knitting together the torn fabric of what should have been. As the time approached for his meeting with Dr. Collins, Maxwell reluctantly prepared to leave, promising Emily he'd return before dinner. "Can we have macaroni and cheese?" she asked hopefully. It had become her favorite meal on days when her appetite was good. "Absolutely," Maxwell agreed, kissing her forehead. "And maybe ice cream for dessert if Dr. Winters says it's okay." Emily beamed, already reaching for her new art supplies to continue painting while he was gone. "I'm going to make something special for you while you're out." As Maxwell headed toward the elevator, his phone rang, William Harrington's name flashing on the screen. Maxwell hesitated, then declined the call. Whatever William wanted, it could wait. Today, Maxwell was finally going to get some answers about what had happened 7 years ago. And nothing, not William, not his company, not anything in the world was going to stop him from uncovering the truth about the night he lost Sarah and the daughter he never knew he had. "Doctor?" James Collins had chosen a small coffee shop 3 blocks from Bennett Medical Research for their meeting. Public enough to discourage a scene, private enough for sensitive conversation. Maxwell spotted him immediately. Mid-50s, thinning, gray hair, the nervous demeanor of a man who had carried a secret for far too long. "Mr. Bennett," Collins acknowledged as Maxwell slid into the booth across from him. "I've been expecting this day for years." Maxwell studied the man, controlling the anger that threatened to boil over. "Then you know why I'm here?" Collins nodded, his fingers fidgeting with a paper napkin. "Your daughter Emily." He swallowed hard. "And Sarah start talking," Maxwell said quietly, his tone leaving no room for evasion. "Everything from the beginning." Collins drew a deep breath. 7 years ago, I was an attending physician at Boston Memorial. Night shift in the ER. A woman was brought in unconscious, severe preeclampsia, 38 weeks pregnant. Her blood pressure was dangerously high, putting both her and the baby at risk. "Sarah," Maxwell supplied, his voice tight. "Yes, though I didn't know her name then. No ID, no phone, nothing to identify her. We performed an emergency C-section to save the baby, a healthy little girl, despite the circumstances." Collins paused, visibly struggling. The mother stabilized initially, but remained unconscious. "We admitted her to the ICU while social services took temporary custody of the infant." And then Collins met Maxwell's gaze directly for the first time. "Then William Harrington showed up. Said he represented the family, that he'd handle everything. He had paperwork, medical power of attorney, family authorization forms, everything needed to take control of the situation." Maxwell's blood ran cold. "Forged documents. I realize that now," Collins admitted, "but at the time they looked legitimate, and Harrington was persuasive." "Persuasive how?" Collins flinched at the directness of the question. He knew about my gambling debts, knew I was about to lose everything. He offered a solution, a position at Bennett Medical Research, substantial salary, all my debts cleared. All I had to do was follow his instructions regarding the patient and her child, which were to alter the records, create a paper trail showing the mother had been discharged against medical advice, removing any connection between her and the baby. Collins stared down at his untouched coffee, and to ensure the infant was placed in the system with no identifying information. Fury rose in Maxwell's chest, threatening to choke him. What happened to Sarah after that? Harrington arranged for her transfer to a private facility. He said she needed specialized care, that it was in everyone's best interest. I didn't ask questions. I should have, but I didn't. What facility? Where? Collins shook his head. He never told me. Once the paperwork was processed, that was it. I never saw her again. Maxwell leaned forward, his voice dangerously soft. Do you understand what you did? You helped separate a mother from her child. You helped keep a father from knowing his daughter existed. For 7 years, Emily has been alone in the world because of what you did. I know, Collins whispered, anguish evident in his face. I've lived with it every day. When I saw in the company newsletter that you'd found her, that you were becoming her guardian, I knew it was only a matter of time before you came looking for answers. Why come forward now? Why agree to this meeting? Collins reached into his jacket, extracting a slim flash drive which he placed on the table between them. Because I kept records of my own insurance. I called it then. Conscience, I realize now. Everything I have on what happened that night, including copies of the original unaltered medical files, is on here. Maxwell picked up the drive, turning it over in his fingers. This doesn't absolve you. No, Collins agreed. Nothing could. But there's something else you should know. He hesitated, then continued. The Nexus protocol treating your daughter. It's not just similar to Sarah's genetic profile. It was derived from it. Maxwell froze. What are you saying? Harrington has been running a secret research division within Bennett Medical for years, using genetic material from Sarah to develop targeted cancer therapies. The treatment saving. Emily's life was literally created from her mother's DNA. The revelation staggered Maxwell. William hadn't just hidden Emily's existence. He'd been exploiting Sarah's genetic material for years, building a biotech fortune on the foundation of his betrayal. Why, Maxwell demanded, why go to such lengths? Money, power, the nexus. Protocols are worth billions. Personalized cancer treatments are the future of oncology. But there's more to it. Collins leaned closer. Harrington needed control of Bennett Industries. With you distracted by Sarah's disappearance, grieving and focused on finding her, he could gradually consolidate his position. A child would have complicated that plan, given you a reason to move forward to build a family legacy. The pieces fell into place with sickening her clarity. William's insistence on handling the search for Sarah personally, his strategic positioning within the company during Maxwell's darkest days, his increasingly aggressive moves toward eventual succession. There's something else, Collins added, his voice dropping lower, something I only discovered recently when I gained access to the restricted research files. Sarah may still be alive. The words hit Maxwell like a physical blow. What the private facility where Harrington Center specializes in long-term care for patients in persistent vegetative states. The last transfer record I found, dated 3 years ago, indicated a patient matching Sarah's description was moved to a facility called Lakewood Haven in western Massachusetts. Hope terrible and wonderful surged through Maxwell. You're certain? As certain as I can be without having seen her myself. The patient identifier matches the code Harrington used in the original transfer. Maxwell stood abruptly, unable to remain seated with the adrenaline coursing through him. If you're lying to me. I'm not, Collins interrupted. Everything I've told you is on that drive, including the Lakewood Haven transfer records. I'm done living with this secret, Mr. Bennett. Whatever happens to me now, I've made my peace with it. Leaving the coffee shop,